Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Beth McCarthy. I am published as M. Dalto, and this is my little chat about Wattpad and digital storytelling. Let me tell you a little bit about myself first before we start. I am a published author of young adult, new adult fantasy stories. I am also the senior editorial director of a small independent press, Sword and Silk Books. But before all that started, I actually was writing stories on Wattpad, which I continue to do so today. So that is why I am going to tell you about this lovely little website and why I think I have something to say about it. So let me tell you a little bit more about my life on Wattpad. I started Wattpad in February of 2016. My username then and still is Druid Rose. You can find me there. Come say hi. I love chatting to new people. I did post my first story up on Wattpad in 2016, which then later won a Wattie. I'll get more into what the Watties are, but pretty much consider them the Oscars for Wattpad stories. So that really was a little bit of an ego boost when you're a new writer on a new platform and you win one of the most coveted prizes for writers at the time. So that helped. And since then, I have been invited to be a paid stories contributor, where Wattpad has a exclusive rights to one story of mine, and readers can pay coins is the currency that they purchase on the website to read it. So I am honored to be a part of that, where my writing can finally be compensated on the site for people to read and enjoy. That being said, I am also a Wattpad star. I guess you can consider that, I hate to say the word, but the upper echelon of Wattpad writers. There's a couple hundred of us that, in as far as Wattpad's eyes, have excelled in our story writing and are, interacting with the community, and so being invited into that program as well has been a great honor for myself. And again, I will get into exactly what these are and how other people can look into joining them as well. And then on top of that, I am a former Wattpad ambassador. And I say former in quotes because I'm actually retraining to rejoin their volunteering program. So in the last 5 years, I've been involved in so many aspects of this site and this company, and I wouldn't be where I am as an author today if not for them. So I would love to take the time I have here with you to tell you what I did, what I've done, what I'm continuing to do, and hopefully it can answer questions that people may have about whether or not joining Wattpad and digital storytelling is the right options for you. So what is Wattpad, other than a website where people can share their stories? Well, let's take it from Wikipedia. It is a website for writers to publish new user-generated stories. Stories you have, your own stories, you publish, you put them up on the website to share for people to read. It aims to create social communities around stories for both amateur and professional writers. Wattpad has a gambit. There are people just starting to get their feet wet in the industry, and then you have published authors who are coming back to the site and sharing their stories there as well. There is an audience of almost 90 million people sharing their stories, reading their stories, interacting with each other. So if you're definitely looking for a platform to not only get your work out there in front of a set of new eyes, but 90 million sets of eyes, it definitely helps get you comfortable with sharing your work when you may be on the edge. Well, I don't know if anyone's ever going to read this. I don't know if I want anybody else to read this or not. That definitely is, a point of hesitation a lot of people have. Sharing your story is the biggest step. So many people write a story and have maybe just one friend or a family member reading it. And it does take a lot of confidence in yourself to be able to make it public, to be able to be like, okay, I can handle potential feedback from people I don't know reading this creative endeavor. But I really believe that Wattpad is a huge step in that right direction. It gives you that little bit of confidence boost, excuse me, just to get, just putting a story out there and out there is an accomplishment in and of itself. So if it's something you're considering, I think it's definitely the right step to move forward. So why should you use it? I asked myself this a lot. I had no idea what Wattpad was until a friend of mine suggested it to me after I received an incredibly bad critique on one chapter of my very first ever written story. Pretty much this unknown anonymous person told me that I should never write again. And I was ready to throw in the hat. It was harsh. It was really harsh. But my friend, she's like, look, they're one person. Why not try to join a community of many, many, and see what happens? Because just one person should not ruin a dream. And it's true. So thanks to that friend's suggestion, I uploaded my first story, and it truly has brought me to where I am as not only, an author, but as a person today. And because of that, I am a published author now. If I had not posted my debut story, which I will just say is 2000 Years, it won a Wattie in 2016. It is now published with the Parliament House. But if I hadn't even considered posting it, I never would have pursued any further writing career. And because of the success the story did have on the platform, it did help me gain that confidence to create that fan base and to be, a champion for my own stories. Because it showed me people actually did want to read my stories, and people were reading my stories, and people were commenting and giving me feedback on my stories. So it all comes back, it's that confidence in yourself to just share your creativity, because the only person who can tell your story is you. So Wattpad is a great source to begin that fan base. Put your stories out there, interact with your readers, have them give you feedback and accept that feedback and listen to them, because you can only see a story one way. But again, when you're on a site like Wattpad with millions and millions of eyes looking at this story, they're going to point things out to you that you never even considered. So I have used Wattpad myself, not only, to share my stories with readers, but to help them almost as if they were my own, critique partners or beta readers. They're giving me feedback on my drafts constantly, letting me know if something works, something doesn't, what questions they have. If there are plot holes that I never would have considered, they're making sure I know about it. And it's not a bad thing. And then your audience. It does help you realize who is reading your stories, what kind of people are reading your stories, and what people want to read. And like I said, if it wasn't for this, my story would have stopped at one. I would never have continued to write the series. I would never have considered writing more stories, because there's almost a thrill when you're writing not only something new, but sharing that something new. And I think that comes with getting comfortable, again, with finding that audience, growing your readership, have people wanting to come back for more. And as you create new content, especially on Wattpad, people will come back. It is a long process. I keep telling people it is not a sprint, it is a marathon, as with many things in this industry. But to get that audience, it's work, it's effort, but you want to do it. Okay, but the question is, how do you do it? Well, first you have to upload your story. If you want people to read it, you have to give them something to read. It can be anything. Wattpad has so many genres. You name it, it's there. Fan fiction, random diaries, to epic fantasies and 200-part, space operas. There is everything on Wattpad. So if you can write it, you can post it. Obviously, there's content guidelines in terms of service that everybody needs to follow. Don't post illegal content. Don't post copyright content. Make sure you follow the rules, but upload your story. If you have something to share, get it up there. People aren't going to read it if you don't post it. One of the best things I found, though, is when you are posting new content, try to stick to a schedule. I have known some people that just want to have a story they just want to share and get it out there. And so they're posting 50 chapters all at once, which is great, to get a story up there and completed on the website actually has shown to garner more readership than a story that is ongoing. However, if you just throw everything at everyone all at once, there's nothing that's going to make them want to come back for more. So by sticking to an updating schedule, whether it's 1 chapter a week, 2 chapters a week, you kind of spread those breadcrumbs for your readers. It's like a serialized TV show or something. You have, the Netflix of the world that, throw everything out at once so you can binge with works. And then you have the Disney Pluses of the world, which continue with the episodic releases every week. To each their own, but I have noticed in my own experience that, if you maintain a schedule, people know when to come back. And by letting people know when to come back, they will come back. And that being said, when they do come back, brings us to number 3, interact with your readers. Anytime someone makes the effort to comment on your story, for better or for worse, interact with them. One of my favorite parts of posting new content on Wattpad is reader reactions. Yes, it may be a stroke of my ego, but I love interacting with my readers. When I finally got over the initial hesitation of sharing work, not only with friends and family, but with the world in essence, you never know how people are going to react. And a lot of people do have difficulty with critique. As a published author, you get used to bad reviews. You have to get used to bad reviews. And I will say that sharing my work on Wattpad and interacting with readers, whether they had issues with the story, whether they were complimenting my story, and everything in between, it helped thicken my skin so that when the time came, when I had books that got beyond Wattpad, that were published, that were released out into the world, and people started leaving their reviews on it, I could stomach it a little better, because you have to understand that not everyone is going to love your work as much as you. Some people might, and those are the ones you cherish and treasure, but not everything is for everybody, and that's okay. That's okay. I mean, so long as people can be respectful and interact with you, they deserve the same respect. That also being said, please don't ever feed the trolls. There are people out there that do go out of their way just to be mean and cruel because they can. This is on any platform, not just Wattpad, but any situation in your life. Be kind. Do not feed into them. It only gives them fodder. Wattpad has wonderful tools to keep you safe, to keep people quiet. There are mute buttons, and if it escalates to the point where people are just violating the terms of service, you can report them. But don't let that scare you from interacting with people. People have opinions. Everyone has an opinion. Some we agree with, some we don't. But again, just interact with them, show them kindness, and kindness will come back to you. And then repeat those steps all over again. Share your stories. The more content you have, the more people are going to want to come back and read what you do. So people constantly ask me, well, how do I become a star? How do I become this? How do I become that? Like, you've got to start with the basics. You have to share something to get somewhere. And it's just follow these steps and maintain them, and it will get you where you need to be. Which brings us to the community. Wattpad has been around for quite some time, and in that time, the community has changed. Unfortunately, in the last year or so, they have gotten done with their forums. I personally wasn't a forum user myself, but it was a huge part of the site where people could come and talk and share and interact with one another. So it has made it somewhat smaller and a little bit more difficult to get yourself and your stories out there, especially for new users. But there are absolutely, definitely ways that you can get around that. I mentioned earlier, that the ambassadors and there's the Waddies and stuff, but a lot of it comes from user generated content too. You'll notice that depending, like if you have a certain genre you write, there may be fan based, profiles. There may be, fantasy users over here and sci-fi, writers over here. And a lot of times those user generated content profiles, they have contests, they have competitions. They may give out a writing prompt for you to share, a short story. They may have you submit your story to be judged by their panel of judges. Get your work out there. That is really the number one thing I do tell anyone who is curious about how to get reads on their stories is you can post it on your own profile, and that's great. That is a great first step. But if nobody else is reading it or has the ability to read it or even know it exists to read it, they won't. They can't. They may not know to search for it. With these profile contests, it allows you to get your own name out there and let people see the kind of content you can produce. With user competitions, get your story in front of people's eyes. Let people read it. They may offer critiques, they may offer reviews. Take advantage of that. I mean, yes, they may be users, with a skill set similar to yours, maybe more experience, maybe less, but getting a different take on something that you've created can always be beneficial. I mean, again, you want that to be in that realm of respect and kindness. But a lot of people do mean well, and you have to be okay with that. Like I said, the biggest thing you can do is put yourself out there. It may be a little bit out of your comfort zone, but it's a learning experience, and learning by doing is where a lot of this comes from. That being said, give and take in this community as well. A lot of there are reader book clubs out there where you can exchange first chapters, a couple chapters, so that someone's reading your story and you're reading theirs. This is one of the things I used a lot when I was first starting, trying to get more eyes on my story. Is that I wanted people to see what I had, but I also wanted to give back. So again, it's that comfort zone. It's getting your work out there any way you can. Now, again, this isn't mean that you go to people's profiles and just start spamming the links to your stories. That is actually spam. That is against terms of service. Personally, I don't accept read requests like that only because I am so busy, and I specifically put that in my profile. So if you're trying to get people to read your stories, you have to also respect the boundaries that they set up. Um, some people may have a, hey, any suggestions for a reading list or a book to read or something along these lines. And then, yeah, by all means, so long as they're asking for it, share your story with them. Let them know. But please do not just go to someone's profile and say, hey, I just wrote this. Here's the link. Want to know what you think, without being prompted. I, for one, can attest that unsolicited messages and postings like that on my own profile specifically, I will ignore or delete. And it's really unfortunate because you don't want that negativity already associated to you as a new user. So just be respectful and mindful of how you're promoting yourself. There are times and places for it. Some people will be okay with it, some won't. So just keep an eye out as you move forward. So I mentioned earlier that I was formally and working towards becoming a Wattpad ambassador again. What the ambassadors are volunteers. They are people that truly are the heart of the community on Wattpad. And there are ambassador run profiles as well. I go back to the user run. So, users can make a profile, anybody can make a profile so long as you're 13 and older. That is the age minimum on Wattpad. There are more Wattpad sanctioned profiles, and those are the ones that are head up by the ambassadors. And again, there is probably one for almost every genre you can think of on the site and more. And it's through these profiles that you will most definitely find writing contests. You will most definitely find writing competitions. You will most definitely find engagement and interaction, because that's what these volunteers are aiming for. They want the community to get involved. So not only do they provide a good source of information for writers and readers, they give you the opportunity to, again, share your work in a more sanctioned area on the site. But at the same time, you may want to give back, a little bit more after whatever the site has done for you. This is what happened with me. I had been on Wattpad, and it had done so much for me personally, and for my career, that I wanted to give back to the community. So that is why I initially did volunteer my time to be a Wattpad ambassador. There was some training. You are a representative of the company, of the site. People will be coming to you with questions, and as that is said, you need to have a basic knowledge. They're not expecting you to know everything, but there is training, and there are guidelines, and there are rules, just with everything else, and you need to adhere by them. But I would highly suggest it if people are involved in Wattpad and want to be more involved, want to give back. The volunteering their time as a Wattpad ambassador is an excellent way to do that. More ways to get involved. The ambassadors run an open novella contest every year. It is probably the largest contest that anybody can participate on the site, next to the Wattpad Awards. But again, this is run by the ambassadors. But the community that comes together for this contest every year, I'm going to put it out there and say is fantastic. Not only are you interacting with other writers who are creating new content at the same time as you are, everyone's following the same milestones to write a 20,000 word novella in the same amount of time. But it also prompts you to maybe think outside that box, just for that little bit new creativity. For me, example, for some reason, every time I participate in the open novella contest, it makes me want to write something other than fantasy. And as a fantasy writer, it definitely takes me out of my comfort zone. It makes me work on it and makes me think on it. And so it kind of gives me a reboot every time this comes up, to maybe consider writing something that I wouldn't normally on any other basis. And there are prizes, they're the accolades. It's getting your name out there, and it's becoming a part of this community that bands together with common goals and deadlines. And I totally suggest it to anybody who may be thinking about it, maybe wanting to write something new. Look into it. It definitely is a great experience every year that it's been done. Which brings me to now the Wattpad Awards. I had mentioned that the first year I joined Wattpad, I was extremely fortunate enough that my story garnered enough, I don't even know, attention, accolades, whatever I did. It did win a Wattpad Award the first year it was posted to Wattpad. And like I said, you can look at the Wattpad Awards like the Oscars of digital storytelling on the website. The contest itself has changed a little bit over the years. Before, you had to be able to have a story written with a certain amount of parts or words within a certain time frame. Last year, they did have the requirement of it needing to be a completed story. We had a couple years, I think, from like 2018 and forward, it was something along those lines. Every year changes, but at the same time, the essence is still there. They look at the best of the best. They look at the best the site has to offer. And they, they choose and they promote. And again, at the end of the day, getting your story noticed, getting your story out there, telling the story you want to tell, and having it be recognized, like it truly is. And I don't want to say it almost comes full circle, but it definitely is a confidence builder. And I think that's what a lot of us in this community need. But if you don't put yourself out there for it, you can't even give yourself that opportunity to achieve it. So this is why with all of these, I reiterate to everyone who is a writer, try. Um, don't just assume that, oh, there'll be so many stories, they'll never look at mine, because that's what I thought. I never ever thought that I would get to the point where I am at now. And all it took was just posting my story, one story. Um, so I really need to emphasize to, only you can tell your story and only you can share your story. And you have to write one to get to the other. But I totally suggest just getting it out there, letting someone else read it. Someone, you could be someone's next favorite author. But if you don't share your story, you'll never know. So, what other opportunities are there? You got your story up, you're getting involved in the community. So what? What now? Well, it depends on what you want to do. Unfortunately, a lot of it also depends on Wattpad itself. So, how do I make money on my stories? How do I become a Wattpad star? How do I get followers? How do I get reads? It all is relative. I will say Wattpad has become very focused on data and algorithms within the last couple of years. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. When I started, they did have genres. There were genre ranking systems. And I do feel that at the time, it did definitely help me garner my readership and gain the momentum I needed for my stories to be seen. Now there's more of a ranking system with tags, just like you would tag a story, whether you're writing your genres, dark fantasy, epic fantasy, romance, LGBTQ, short stories, new adult, what young adult, every story needs to be tagged some way or another on the site. And there is data that gets pulled from that, and it does determine who sees your stories, how often they see your stories. I wish I had an answer for exactly what they did and how it worked. I still don't know. But that doesn't stop me, and it shouldn't stop anybody else either. So how do you become a Wattpad star? Well, there is a form. There wasn't a form before. On their website, there currently is, a star's interest form that you can submit to show them that you are interested. But just because you submit that form does not mean you get to automatically become a star. There are other factors involved, in addition to Wattpad headquarters, wanting to invite you to the community. You need to be very active. You need to be engaging. You need to be unique in your own way. You need to be a presence. And I only say that in that you can't just post one story, let it go, and assume that it's going to be enough to catch Wattpad's attention and want to invite you into this program. You need to work at it. And I tell that to a lot of people. It's effort. It's just like if you were marketing a story after you signed a publishing deal, before your release. You don't just sign the contract and it's done. There's editing, there's marketing, there's all publication process. It's work. And just so the same is thing with Wattpad too. You post your story, gain your readership, and as you work that, you create that presence. And that's where the Wattpad stars can come in. If you are truly interested and believe you fit the qualifications that they're looking for, I would highly suggest that you submit their interest form. Again, I don't know how often you should. I don't know what the turnaround is. Um, you know, but I would say don't just count yourself out. Definitely try, because in order to be a part of additional opportunities, it has to start somewhere. Like paid stories. To be in the paid stories program, you need to be a Wattpad star. Paid stories, like I had said earlier, is Wattpad's pretty much digital digital options to purchase stories, exclusive Wattpad content stories. I do have one story in the paid stories program right now. It is exclusively Wattpad's. The first 8 chapters or so are a sample free to read, and then you purchase coins through the app to continue the story. Some people believe the Wattpad story is just is money grubbing. Um, it's unfortunate people don't believe that authors deserve to be compensated. Um, but I say that with, I mean, I still share free content. There is still so much free content on the site. There will always be free content on the site. So just because an author chooses to join the paid stories program, just because one of their stories does become a paid story, does not mean there aren't many other options out there. That also being said, consider supporting your favorite authors, writers. Maybe your favorite author, has a story going into the program. Consider buying it. Show their support. There's a reason they're doing it, and there's a reason Wattpad has asked them for their stories to be in this situation as well. So don't look at it necessarily as a bad thing. Look at it as a big boost for your favorite writers. So the next, Wattpad Books, again, that is now Wattpad's actual traditional publishing branch. Again, it's kind of a Wattpad has to reach out to you type situation to be published. It is not open to the public to query right now. No, they're not accepting submissions from any old Wattpad writers. But it is also an option that is there. So if you have a story and you want that to be your goal, you work towards it. And trust me, I'm there with you. Some people, their goal is to see their book be the next new Netflix series, which is where Wattpad Studio comes in. But again, they have to approach you. They have to see something special and unique and want to, take it to the next level. But it's perseverance. It's putting that effort in to begin with to get you to where you want to be, which I think can be said about anything in this industry. Anything can happen when you put your mind to it, to be as cliche as possible, but it's true. And the same thing goes with Wattpad. You get that story on there, you continue interacting with your readership, you build your readership, you build your following, and it will carry over to the opportunities that can present themselves in the future. You don't just want to, again, post it, let it go, and wonder why nothing's happening. You have to make the effort. With anything else, you have to want to get further. You have to want to grow. And there are definitely many ways to do so on Wattpad, but it takes work. It does take work, but it can be done. It definitely can be done. And I highly suggest that anybody who's interested in it, start. It has been a fantastic opportunity for me. It has been where I began and where I continue to grow. I would not be the writer I am today, not only just the craft, but the confidence. I never would have considered publishing my story if it hadn't been for my initial posting to Wattpad. So I continue to support the site. I continue to support writers with interest in it. I always tell people that try it out. You may post a story, it may get somewhere, it may not. Try something else. But don't just count it out saying, oh, no one's ever going to read it. No one's ever going to look at it. No one's ever going to care. I thought so too. I really did. And you never know if you don't try. And I say that to anybody who asks. It's why I am more than happy to be here right now talking to anybody I can about Wattpad, because it truly has helped me in everything I do as a writer, and continues to help me in everything I do as a writer. And it's one of those sites that I will always support. I will always harken back to, because it truly has propelled me. It propelled my career. It really did help me be who I am today because of it. Um, so that being said, if there are any questions, I will be in the Discord to answer them for you, whether it's about anything I said here, anything I hadn't covered, anything that you've just been dying to know about Wattpad and never knew who to ask or how to ask. Feel free just to shout them out, and I will be more than happy to answer them best I can. If I can't, I will direct you to where you can find out more information. And I will also make sure that we can start a dialogue with, because if you don't ask, you don't know. But that is my presentation now on Wattpad. And again, this is M. Dalto, Mary Beth McCarthy. Thanks so much for this time, and I'll be seeing you in the Discord.